Hello brothers and sisters, today we're going to talk about ultimate reality and is understanding the fact that there is a creator. So throughout human history people have always understood there is more to life than just the physical dimension, and people have always sought for God, understanding God, or the deeper meaning of life and the spirit world. And so this particular section we're going to talk about today is about understanding the Creator. So of course there have been many religions in human history, as we've said, and they've grown up in cultural isolation from one another. But they've all come to the conclusion there is a God, and they've given that God different names. If you're a Muslim, you might talk about Allah. If you're a Christian, you might talk about God. You can talk about Nam if you're a Sikh, or Ahuru Mazda, or Jehovah, or Yahweh for the Jewish people. Kami is a Japanese term for God. The Great Spirit for the American Indians. Brahman for the Hindu people, and Tao you find in the Far Eastern philosophy. So many different names for God, but actually there can only be one reality. If we look at human beings, they all exist according to the same laws and the same principles. The force of gravity affects everybody, for example. And we all have to breathe, we have to eat, we have to live according to the same natural laws. And this is also a reality of the physical body. If we look at the physical body of human beings, whatever their religion, they all work in according to the same principles and laws. Everybody's blood is red, their bone structures are the same or very, very similar. And if an operation is needed for someone who is sick, they will follow the same procedures irrespective of your religion. So it shows that we live in a common reality, and the inner reality, although there are different names for God, we're talking about the same reality really. There isn't a different God for Muslims and a different God for Christians. The names are different, the culture's different, but the reality is the same reality. We're talking about the same ultimate being, whatever the name we know that being by. So it's very, very important to understand that all religions have a great deal in common, and in their moral and spiritual principles they're probably 65 or 70% the same. The ethics, the standards of how you should treat others, how you should behave in your life with kindness, generosity, care, concern, help the poor, look after the sick, these are the same. So this shows commonality again, and the fact that we are all coming from the same source. So this is the first point. And ultimately we talk about God as being a parent, the ultimate parent of humankind. So of course it's very important for us to understand what is the nature of the Creator. So even religious people, they're not always sure what is God really like, what is the Creator really like, and how do we relate to the Creator. This is very, very important. So we're going to explore that now. So we had to stop there for a moment or two because of the heavy rain. Sorry about that, but we continue now as the rain has abated. So this is the thing we need to consider, that there is one ultimate reality or one God, and what is the nature of that Creator we really do need to know, because as human beings we are derived from that being. God is the source of our being, so how is that God and how do we relate to that God, and what is the nature of that Creator? What was the Creator's reason for creating human beings in the first place? Because if we don't really know what God's motive was or is, how will we know ourselves what our purpose is? Unless we know God's purpose a bit more clearly, we can't really understand our own purpose and how to relate to God. Is God a benevolent God or an angry God, an indifferent God? Or did God create the universe and then disappear somewhere? And is he no longer concerned with what happens? These are questions we need to resolve. So let's have a look at this more deeply. If we look at the scientific method, we can see that there is always a cause, which is oftentimes invisible, and then there's a result or an effect. And we can understand something of the cause by examining the effect or the results. And this is true of all things, really. So what is invisible can be understood through that which is visible. If you look at a human being, their expression, their way of moving, or their particular mode of being will express their invisible self, their mind, their heart, and their personality. As we've got here, you can't really see a person's mind, but their body is expressing their inner self, their mind, their invisible self. So this is a method we'll look at and use to some degree. To understand the invisible or the cause of things, we can look at the results. And oftentimes people think that if you're a scientist, you must necessarily be an atheist. But this is quite incorrect, and many of the great scientists are persons that understand the reality of God and have understood there's more to life than just material things. So the idea that to be a scientist you must necessarily be an atheist is completely wrong. And there's a very interesting quote here on the screen behind me from Albert Einstein. "I believe in God, who reveals himself in the orderly harmony of what exists." So we must remember that there's not really a contradiction between science and religion. The real top scientists, they understand that there is something more and there is a God. They may not have a conventional religion necessarily, but they understand and believe. So we can get to know the nature of God through looking at that which exists. As Einstein was saying there, we look at the existing things in the orderly harmony of things, and we can come to understand the origin. So looking at all things, we can see everything exists with dual characteristics. Human beings have a physical form, a body, but they also have a heart and mind. This is the invisible reality. It's not a physical thing at all. Your mind is not a physical thing, it's a spiritual thing. A doctor can perform a brain operation on a human being, but they can't operate on your mind. They can't take your mind out and repair it and then put it back in. That's not really possible because it's not a physical entity. So we have this heart and mind that directs our external self. And animals also have a body which is very similar to our body. The structure is similar, the organs are similar, and they function in similar ways. And they also have this internal part as well. We call it animal mind or instinct, and we can marvel at that, the way animals know things. For example, if you're a person that owns a dog, your dog will understand a great deal about you because they have this inner mind. If you're sick, they will know, and if you're coming home, for example, and even if you're not at the door, they will run to the door and wait for you to arrive because they have this inner compass or this inner mind, instinctual mind, as well as a body. They're not just a physical being. And plants also have a body, a physical part that we can see. And there's also this internal, invisible part to plants. We call it the plant mind. And people know that if you talk to your plants, they will grow better, or if you play certain types of music to plants, they will respond to that accordingly. So we can see all things that exist around us, from human beings all the way down to particles, subatomic particles. They have an inner nature and an outer form. Plants, as we've said already, they have this inner mind, and they will respond to noise, they will respond to music, they will grow better if you play certain types of music. And so this is a very fascinating reality, that what we look at is not just the whole reality. There's always the inner aspect, this invisible mind aspect that controls and directs the external form. So it's very, very interesting. Also, as well as that dual characteristic of inner and outer, there's another dual characteristic that's we can see all around us in the created world. Again, looking at humans, the form of human beings is always man and woman. This is historically so. Thousands and thousands of years, or even millions of years ago, there were men and women. Animals also exist as male and female. Plants exist as stamen and pistil. And molecules, atoms and particles, they also exist as positive and negative entities. So everything has this as well. We have primarily, fundamentally, men and women, they all have mind and body, but as well as that, we're either masculine or feminine, and this is the same for everything else. Animals, plants, molecules, atoms and particles, everything has this dual structure or dual characteristics. So this is the reality. This is the reality we're within. So it should lead us to certain conclusions, because we've understood that the outer result or effect is reflective of the cause. And again, there's a very interesting quotation here from Romans chapter 1 verse 20 from St. Paul. He perceived this, and he said, God's eternal power and divine nature are clearly seen in the things that are made. So this is saying the same thing, but in a biblical language. So we can summarize and say then, the universe has a certain form which is reflective of the causative being, or the heavenly God. God must have the same form as the universe. We have an external form which also has positive and negative, as we've said already, or male and female. We have also an internal character in the universe which is positive and negative, or masculine and feminine in all things. So therefore we can understand that the original being, the first cause we call God, has internal form, internal character, and external form, positivity and negativity, or masculinity and femininity. So for some people that's a revelation that God has femininity as well, but this is an absolute truth. Nothing can exist in the universe that doesn't already exist in the causative being we call God. So summarizing then, God has an internal nature and an external form, and masculinity and femininity. So in history, women have had to play a subdued role. They were even persecuted and treated as property in some instances, because people didn't understand that there's the divine feminine as well as the divine masculine, that God has both of these aspects, and they're both very, very important. So okay, so to go further then, we need to consider, what is the purpose of life? A very big question. I remember pondering about it when I was a young man, a teenager. There was one day when I was awake in my bed in the early morning, and I was thinking about the purpose of life, wondering about the purpose of life. And I thought to myself, today I won't get up until I've figured out the purpose of life. And then it got to be 8 o'clock, and I should already have been at work. And my father came into the room. He said, "Ed, why are you still in bed?" I said, "Dad, I'm not getting up today because I haven't yet figured out the purpose of life." And his reply was, "Ed, get up and go to work." So I did. But this question is something that we all come up with at some point in our life. We wonder, why am I alive? What is it all about? So we need to understand that. And we can understand that God is the original creator. But humankind, we're also creators. We have tremendous creative ability. It seems to be infinite when we look around us and see all the different things that humans make. This computer I'm talking from, and all the different items, houses, chairs, tables. I can look around and see hundreds of things in this room, all created by human beings. And we have this incredible creativity. So we have to think about that as well. Why do we create? Why aren't we happy just to live in the forest, eating nuts and berries and running around in our birthday suits? Why do we create? This is the big question. So simply to find happiness, to find joy. And we do this by seeing our nature expressed in that which we create. So it's a joyful thing. If you can conceive of something, you can design a table, for example, and then you can actually create it. It's a tremendously exciting and joyful experience, and it brings us tremendous joy. If you're a fashion designer, you might design a new type of shirt or trousers, and you may put that together, you may sew it all together, and then it will make you happy. It gives you joy. And if you're a great artist and you create a masterpiece after maybe many years of trying, then you will obtain tremendous happiness and joy from that. So we all do this. We're all creators in our own way. We create things in our own lives, and from that we find happiness. It may even just be digging the garden. If you dig the garden in the springtime and you turn all the soil over and it all looks clean and beautiful and not a weed in sight, it's a very joyful and satisfying process. If you bake a cake, if you're a lady and you bake a cake and that cake turns out to be the most beautiful, perfect cake, the best one you've ever created, it's a very joyful thing when your family compliment you and say, "Mum, that was a fantastic and wonderful cake, we really enjoyed it." So we find joy by seeing our nature and our inner self expressed in that which we create. So this should tell us something about God, really. Why does God create? So it must be something to do with this seeking for joy, seeking for happiness. Nobody creates to be miserable or to be unhappy. So God would not have created to be miserable or to suffer a loss in any way. He must have done that because the end result must be happiness for God. The Bible does say we're in God's image and likeness, so that means we're very much like God, and God is also like us. It cuts both ways, really. So what does God desire? This is the point, and this is the most important thing to think about, because people don't always know what God desires or what does God want. So we can start by looking at humankind and consider the things that humans might desire. For example, we might desire money, and of course money is useful, as with money you can buy all sorts of things. You can buy new cars, televisions, houses, but by itself it's not really sufficient to bring you complete happiness and joy. You could be the richest person in the world and you could have a miserable life. We see this oftentimes with people that are very wealthy. They may commit suicide, or they may have a terrible family life, and they're not really happy at all. So money can't buy you love, as the song goes. We might think, if only I was a bit more powerful, then we could do something in the world. So people seek after power and authority, and we might think, if only I was the Prime Minister instead of Sir Keith Starmer, then things might be a lot better. We could think that way. But again, power without love is meaningless. If you have all this power but everybody hates you, it's not really a positive and useful or good experience. We can think of extreme examples like Joseph Stalin. He was the most powerful man. His word was like the word of God, and if the history books said something and he said something else, they would simply change the history books to match his words. So we can see that incredible power. But if you look at his personal life, it was actually not the best of lives. It was a life of fear, because nobody really liked him, because they were ruled by terror and ruled by fear, and his authority came from that. It was enforced in authority. So in the end he lived a fearful life, and as I've said before, he had several bedrooms in the Kremlin, and he would sleep in a separate bedroom every night, and nobody would really know where he was because he was so fearful. So not a good life to have power if everybody hates you. So on the other hand, true love is the most important thing for human beings. You can have all the money in the world, but if nobody loves you, you can have all the power in the world, but nobody loves you, then it's a horrible existence. But you could live in the middle of a forest in a simple thatched hut, and if the people around you genuinely loved you and cared for you and were kind, and you had a good harmony among yourselves, that would be the most important thing. On the other hand, you could live in a huge palace with every amenity, and the people could be saying to your face, yes sir, no sir, yes madam, no madam, but in their hearts, if they dislike you greatly and what they did was only because it was their job, then you wouldn't feel comfortable there. So we can see the most important thing for human beings is true love, to be able to love and to be loved, and that creates happiness, security. It's the ultimate point. When we listen to the songs on the radio, they are all about love. There are a few about money or power, but generally they're about love. Finding love, losing love, hoping for love. This is the most central thing for us. So when we think about that, how about God? God, of course, is the creator of everything, so God can create as much gold and diamonds as he wants. God can be as rich as he wants to be. God, of course, is the most powerful being. But can God find true love if he's alone? And that's the point. This is the central point. That it's impossible to find love by yourself. If you were alone, and if you look in the mirror and say, I love me, after a short while it becomes very boring. Love requires someone to love, someone with whom you can share your heart, your inner feelings, your desires, your hopes, someone whom you can be compatible with on this inner heart, this inner character. This is what love is. We need somebody to love who is like us, who can respond to us. If you sit down next to someone and you think, maybe I can find love with this person, you pour out your heart, your soul, your spirit to them, and they look at you blankly like you're a complete idiot, then love cannot flow. So it needs a certain resonance of heart for love to flow. So this is the same with God. God cannot just love himself for eternity. God needs someone to love. And the whole universe was created not for money, not for power, but actually for true love. And human beings are the created beings that are in the image of God and are capable of reciprocating with God in true love. In other words, we have the capacity to understand God's heart, God's feelings, and God's joys and sorrows. And God would therefore feel tremendous joy through this relationship. So just as human beings, our primary goal in life is not money or power. It's actually true love, to find true, lasting, unchanging love. For God it's the same. God is seeking for true, unchanging and lasting love with human beings. Human beings have this tremendous potential to be true children of the true God and have this true relationship of true love with God. So there are many scriptural quotations that talk about God in this way. For example, in 1 John 4:16 in the Bible, it says God is love. And then we can see from Buddhism, the great compassionate heart is the essence of Buddhahood. So compassion is to do with love. It's an aspect of love, the compassionate heart. So this is the essence of Buddhahood. Love, God is love in the Bible. And here's a very interesting quote from the Hinduism, from the Bhagavad Gita. To love is to know me, my innermost nature, the truth that I am. Very, very important quotation. To love, in other words, to practice love, is the key to knowing God. Because all the power we have, all the knowledge we have, compared to God, it's not very great. But we can love in this tremendous universal way. So the practice of love is the key to knowing the truth of God. So we could study theology all of our life and we still might not know God, but we could practice love and we would come to know God's heart and God's truth in a much deeper way. So that's a wonderful quote from the Bhagavad Gita. There's another one from Islam here, from the Quran. God is all gentle to his servants, providing for whomsoever he will. Again, gentleness, kindness, this is an aspect of love. So all the religions understand this, that God is not a tyrant or a cruel God, but the centre of God is actually heart or love or compassion or kindness, gentleness, all of these things. So we can express the nature of God like this, really. Not that God is looks like a big target, but this is a symbolic thing. So the most outward part of God is the external form. This is the physical world that we live in our present moment. And this is comprised of energy, which takes many different forms. And this is the external aspect of God. And then we can talk about God's inner self, God's inner character. God has emotion, intellect and will, as we humans do. And God has concepts and laws and ideas. And the centre of everything is this circle in the middle, this brighter circle with the heart written. So the centre of God is heart, which means the desire to love and the desire to be loved. This is the core of God's being and the most important aspect of things. And we're like this as well. The core of human beings is heart. It's our emotion, it's our inner self and our desire to love and our desire to be loved. And if we can fulfill that in a true and a good way, we will be completely happy, rather than trying to fulfill our goals materially or through power and through money. We have to fulfill the goals of love primarily. If you have the other things, it's okay, but money and power without love, it's all meaningless. So these are very important universal principles. True love is a giving love, and this is the centre of the universe. So God gives first. God is the most unselfish being that exists. So true love is a giving love. So people can't just wait to be loved, but we have to initiate everything by living for the sake of others, living for the greater good. And again, it's raining. Should we stop going? Hope for the best and keep going. All things exist as part of the whole to give love, which is primary, that's the first thing, and receive love, which is a secondary thing. So our world is oftentimes back to front, that people try to receive without giving at all. And therefore we live in a fractured and divided world because of this misunderstanding of universal principles. Self-centeredness creates division. This is what we have to remember. So we all exist as part of the whole, part of this wonderful universe, and we exist to give love on our own particular level to our wife, to our children, to our family, to live for them. And if we all have this capacity to live for the sake of others, but we have to develop it more in our world, because often our world, people's motive is a very selfish one. They want to receive love for themselves, but not necessarily for the sake of others. So it doesn't really work very well. So the universal principle, giving first, living for the sake of others, living for the greater good. And this reflects the heart of God, who gives endless, unconditional love to humankind and the universe. So God gave of himself completely, emptied himself completely, because he wanted to create the very best universe and the very best human beings, the very best children, the very best sons and daughters, the very best families that would be alive and vibrant with his love unceasingly. So as human beings, we should be able to show appreciation and love for our Creator. Once we realize that God is living for me, God is living for each and every one of us. Once we realize this, God isn't there commanding us, but God is serving us, caring for us every single day. We can really appreciate and love our Creator in a much greater way than if we imagine God is just somehow on his throne somewhere on another galaxy maybe, but not connected to me. But God is maintaining and upholding the universe day by day, moment by moment. God is endlessly pouring out himself in order for others to be happy. Once we realize this, we can love God in a much greater way than we hitherto may have done. So God has a personality of true love, and God lives for his heart's purpose. That's to say, the purpose of love, so that love can be manifested in the greatest possible way in the universe and in human life. And God is the ultimate parent. Just as human parents love their children, we live for the sake of our children. We do everything for their education, for their well-being. We feed them the best food we can. We buy them the best clothes we can. We do everything for them, and that never stops. When they get to be 21 years old, we don't present them with a bill and say, "Look, Johnny, this is what I spent on you. You can pay me back now. You're old enough." We never do that. We continue to give, and we always feel, "I wish I could give more." This is like God. God is the God that continually gives and wishes he could give more to his children. So the parent of true love, God is the ultimate parent, not the ultimate dictator, tyrant or ruler. He's the ultimate parent who lives with compassion, mercy, kindness, forgiveness, and above all love for his human children. He lives for his children. And God is the origin of true love. If we're looking to understand true love or feel true love, we have to relate to God. This is why in the Bible it advises us to love God with all our heart, mind and soul, and to reflect that by loving our neighbour as ourselves. And God lives for his creation entirely. So there are many scriptural quotes from different religions that will reinforce this. We can look in Hinduism, and we can find again in the Bhagavad Gita, "I am father and mother of the world." So there's an understanding there that God is the ultimate parent. From Sikhism, from the Adi Granth, "You are father, mother, friend, brother. With you as comforter in all places, what fear have I?" Again expressing the parental nature of God. Father, mother, friend, brother. from Christian Science, love the divine principle is the father and mother of the universe, including humankind. So again, they have this understanding. God is the ultimate parent, or the father and mother. Here's a quote from Islam here. Anas and Abdullah reported God's messenger as saying, "All human creatures are God's children, and those dearest to God are the ones who treat his children kindly." So again, a very important quote. So there we are, that's the end of that presentation, and I've written here the principles of harmony from the Universal Peace Federation. We are one human family created by God, the ultimate reality. The highest qualities of human beings are spiritual and moral in nature. The family is the school of love and peace. The way to reconcile the divided human family is to live for the sake of others. Cooperation beyond ethnic, religious and national boundaries leads to lasting peace. So if we practice these principles, if we understand them deeply, we can create the peaceful world, the harmonious world, the world of love and brotherhood that we have talked about. So thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.